like I said, never been in one of those situations where what you had hoped for didn't turn out as expected. I know in the big picture that's not a big deal. I mean, there are far more serious things going on in the world that don't turn out as expected. Jobs and relationships and children and parents and schools and health and, man, even life itself doesn't always turn out as expected. The guy Bill, who was helping us, is a guy who's been clean and sober for 30 years. But in the last 18 months, he's lost his 25-year-old son and his mother. His wife sits in just tremendous grief, almost unable to operate around herself with such depression. And Bill wonders, what does God have to say to him today? And he's such a nice guy, but he's just so angry right now. Because the things in the church don't bring him any solace. So we're driving to Newport together. I'm sitting in the jumper seat in the middle, and Bill's on the other side. And he's asking me about church and about God and what he should be doing and what's going on. And he says, you know, I went to Catholic school every day. I went to Mass every Sunday. And for what? A church that keeps changing its mind and saying that everything is okay. Well, everything's not okay. And for Bill, it wasn't. I hate my life. It's such a disappointment. It's like I don't have any joy. I've known this guy for 15 years. I play golf with him. He's always at the family parties. He's a guy that's known for enthusiasm and a good joy. And joy. But there's no joy in his life. You know, there was joy once in Jerusalem. Now, I've been blessed to have gone to the Holy Land on a couple of different occasions, and I've walked from the Mount of Olives down the winding and twisting paths into the city gates of Jerusalem. And I can imagine it in my mind's eye. Hundreds lining the streets, shouting, laying their coats and palms on the road, preparing the way, men and children and women filled with joy over this conquering hero named Jesus. And if you suspend reality just for a minute, you can hear it too. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heavens. Or as we heard Eugene Peterson say, the shouts from the crowd were, blessed is he who comes, King in God's name. All is well in heaven. Glory in the high places. These affirmations and acclamations were all up and down the city streets as Jesus came into Jerusalem. And those that were well versed in Hebrew Scripture were remembering the prophecy of Zechariah. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Lo, the King comes before you, triumphant and victorious. He is humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of the donkey. But Zechariah not only shows the image, he gives a promise. He says, and the prisoners will be set free. And Jesus will restore hope double. Kind of cool, huh? Not just simple hope, not just wannabe hope, but hope double. These were the shouts and the feelings and the expectations and the dreams and the desires of the people who lined those streets. Trouble is, the king that they had hoped for and dreamed for was not an empire king, but it was a kingdom king. You see, Jesus was not what they were expecting. Now, I'm sure you know that these kinds of entrances that Jesus made, like Jesus made, they weren't unusual. In fact, they were somewhat commonplace in Jerusalem. The greeting that Jesus received when he rode that donkey into the city is a reception that was given for many, many, many conquering heroes in the past. Remember, in the life of Jerusalem, there had been many parades. Persian, Roman, Greek princes and generals had ridden their beautiful, majestic war horses down that same Mount of Olives into the city, accompanied by those same shouts, "Blessed is he who comes, the King, in God's name. All's well in heaven. Glory in the high places." Caesar himself was given that same greeting. But these riders were political and empire riders. And those that came out to greet them were really just trying to assure themselves of their own place in the empire. The folks that lined the streets when the conquering generals and princes and kings came into town were those who had the most to lose. Politicians and pundits and people of wealth accustomed to the finer things in life. They laid down their best tunics of silk and linen. They laid down exotic flowers and palms. For them, when a conquering king came into a community like Jerusalem, it wasn't a tribute. It was a show. Do you think the king will notice my new red scarf? Do you think the emperor could hear my shouts? Maybe if I yell loud enough and lay down my best clothes, I might be considered for a post in the guard. These shouts, these parades, these shows did not focus on the expectation of prisoners being freed, but of wealth being garnered. These shows didn't hope for one's desires for wholeness in life to be restored. These shows were about privilege within the empire, not about the personal relationship with God. Friends, that's what made Jesus' entry so very different. That's why the expectations were blown out of the water. That's why there was so much joy and excitement then. Yes, Jesus is a king, but he's no ordinary king. Jesus was the king of fishermen, tax collectors, Samaritans, of harlots, of blind men, of demoniacs and cripples. That's Jesus' band of followers. Those who lined the street when Jesus came from the Mount of Olives down into Jerusalem that day were a ragtag, pathetic, unfit, grand people of nothing.